Imagine this. One man, standing against the largest army the ancient world had ever witnessed, with just 40,000 soldiers by his side. What if I told you this wasn't just a fight for survival, but the ultimate test of courage, strategy, and sheer willpower? In 331 BC, a young 25-year-old king from Macedon, Alexander the Great, faced an enemy force so massive it seemed impossible to overcome. Yet, what unfolded on that battlefield changed the course of history forever. Welcome to the story of the Battle of Gaugamela, where brilliance outshone numbers, and a single day reshaped empires. By the end of this journey, you'll see exactly how Alexander turned the impossible into reality with tactics so clever they're still taught in military schools today. So, grab a seat, and let's dive into one of the greatest underdog stories ever told. Let's set the stage. It's 331 BC, and Alexander has already conquered much of the known world. From Greece to parts of Asia, his name strikes fear into the hearts of kings. But one giant obstacle remains in his path: the mighty Persian Empire, led by King Darius III, often called the King of Kings. This empire stretches from the sands of Egypt to the borders of India, a powerhouse of wealth, soldiers, and influence. Darius isn't just a ruler. He's a symbol of power that no one has dared to challenge until now. And he's burning with rage. Why? Because 2 years earlier, at the Battle of Issus, Alexander didn't just defeat him, he humiliated him. Not only did Alexander win that fight, but he also captured Darius' family, his wife, mother, and children. Most conquerors would have used them as pawns or worse, but Alexander did something unexpected. He treated them with respect, almost like his own family. This act of kindness would later play a surprising role, but that's a tale for another time. For now, know this: Darius fled that battlefield, leaving his loved ones behind. The shame was unbearable. His own nobles whispered behind his back, calling him weak, a coward. His empire was slipping through his fingers. So, what did Darius do? He decided to crush Alexander once and for all. He gathered the biggest army the ancient world had ever seen. Over 250,000 men from every corner of his empire. Think about that number for a second. That's 250,000 soldiers, including fierce warriors, war elephants that could crush entire squads, and 200 deadly chariots with blades spinning on their wheels, ready to slice through enemies. On top of that, he had his elite troops, known as the Persian Immortals, and some of the best cavalry in the world. Alexander, on the other hand, had just 47,000 men. That's right, Darius's army outnumbered him 5 to 1. Any normal leader would have turned back, called it quits, and saved his men for another day. But Alexander wasn't normal. He was something else entirely. A visionary, a risk-taker. A man who didn't just want to win battles, but to carve his name into history. Why would Alexander even consider facing such a giant force head-on? It wasn't just about defeating Darius. It was about proving a point. Alexander wanted the world to know that no empire, no matter how big, could stand in his way. This wasn't just a battle for land or power. It was a battle for legend. And to understand how he pulled it off, we need to look at the incredible mind games and strategies that made Gaugamela a turning point in history. First, let's talk about the battlefield itself. Darius wasn't foolish. He had learned from his past mistakes against Alexander. This time, he picked the perfect spot for his massive army, the plains of Gaugamela, in what's now modern-day Iraq. Why was this place ideal for him? Because it was wide, open, and flat, perfect for his secret weapons. Those 200 chariots, with spinning blades, needed space to charge at full speed, cutting through soldiers like paper. His 15 war elephants could stomp through enemy lines with ease on such terrain. And to make sure nothing got in the way, Darius had his engineers work for months to level the ground, removing every rock, every bump, every hill that could slow down his cavalry or chariots. He thought he had the upper hand. He thought this was his moment to crush Alexander. But what he didn't know was that Alexander was always one step ahead. Alexander's spies were everywhere. They reported back every detail about Darius' army. Their numbers, their weapons, even their plans. Alexander studied the land himself. He noticed something critical. The Persian left flank, one side of their massive line, wasn't as strong as the rest. He also knew those chariots needed speed to be deadly. If he could disrupt their momentum, they'd be useless. But here's where Alexander's genius really shines. He didn't just use the information he gathered, he turned it into a weapon. He let some of his own scouts get captured on purpose. Why? Because he fed them fake details about his plans, knowing they'd spill it to the Persians. This was psychological warfare at its best, making the enemy think they knew what was coming, when in reality, they were walking into a trap. The night before the battle, tension was high in Alexander's camp. His generals were nervous. They begged him to launch a surprise attack under the cover of darkness. It made sense. Hitting the Persians when they least expected it could balance the odds. But Alexander refused. He said something unforgettable. "I will not steal my victory." At first, this might sound like pride or arrogance, but it wasn't. It was part of his plan. Alexander wanted Darius to feel confident, to think he had every advantage. He wanted the Persian king to throw everything he had into this fight, because Alexander already knew how to turn that confidence into chaos. His strategy was bold, risky, and absolutely brilliant. On October 1st, 331 BC, the two armies faced each other at dawn. The Persian line stretched across the horizon, over 2 miles wide, a wall of soldiers, horses, and war machines. In the center stood Darius himself, surrounded by his elite immortals and Greek mercenaries who had switched sides for Persian gold, about 10 million in today's money, by some estimates. On the wings were the Persian cavalry, some of the best horsemen in history. And right in front, those 200 deadly chariots, waiting to tear through Alexander's men. It looked hopeless. It seemed like the battle was over before it even started. But Alexander saw something different. He saw an opportunity. Let's talk about how Alexander set up his army. Instead of trying to match the Persian line in size, which would have been impossible, he arranged his 47,000 men in a way no one had seen before. His formation was angled almost diagonal, with his strongest troops on the right wing, where he himself would lead the charge. This was clever because it focused his power in one key area instead of spreading it thin. But the real trick was what he hid behind his main line. Reserve units, fast-moving soldiers who could jump in wherever they were needed. And then there was his companion cavalry, the best of the best, ready to strike like a dagger at the perfect moment. As the two armies stared each other down, the air was thick with tension. Over 300,000 men stood ready to fight to the death. Darius, feeling sure of his victory, even sent a message to Alexander, offering half his empire worth billions in today's dollars, if he would walk away. Alexander's reply was ice cold and legendary. If I were Darius, I would accept. But I'm Alexander. There was no turning back. The fate of two empires would be decided in the next few hours. The battle began with chaos. Darius unleashed his first big move, the chariot charge. Those 200 blade-wheeled chariots raced toward Alexander's center at full speed. This should have been a bloodbath. But Alexander was ready. Instead of holding a tight line, his soldiers, trained spearmen called phalanxes, opened up like a funnel. The chariots sped through the gaps, unable to hit anyone, while Alexander's men threw javelins at the drivers. In just minutes, Darius' most terrifying weapon was useless. It was a stunning start, but this was only the first step of Alexander's plan. Next came the trick that changed everything. Alexander started moving his entire army to the right, away from the flat ground Darius had prepared so carefully. This made Darius nervous. If Alexander got off that leveled terrain, the Persian cavalry would lose their edge. So, Darius did exactly what Alexander hoped. He stretched out his left wing to block the move. But in doing so, he created a gap in the center of his own line. And Alexander was waiting for just that. With perfect timing, he turned his companion cavalry and charged straight into that gap, aiming right for Darius himself. This wasn't just a random attack. It was a precise, deadly strike meant to cut the head off the snake. At the same time, Alexander's phalanxes moved forward, their long 18-foot spears forming a wall of death that the Persians couldn't break through. The enemy was now trapped between two forces, the hammer of Alexander's cavalry crashing through the center, and the anvil of his infantry pushing from the front. Panic started to spread through the Persian ranks. And then came the moment that decided it all. What? As Alexander's cavalry got closer, Darius lost his nerve. He turned his chariot and fled the battlefield. When the Persian soldiers saw their king running, their morale shattered. What was once a mighty army turned into a crowd of scared men running for their lives. Alexander's troops chased them for miles. By the time the sun set, the battle was over. The Persian Empire, once thought unbeatable, was broken in a single day. The aftermath of Gaugamela was staggering. Alexander didn't just win a battle, he conquered the richest empire in the world. The treasure he captured was beyond imagination. Gold and riches worth billions of dollars today, enough to fund his campaigns for years. But more than that, he proved something powerful. The Persian Empire wasn't invincible. Within months, every major Persian city surrendered to him. Alexander took Darius' throne, wore his royal robes, and even married into Persian nobility. Gaugamela wasn't the end of a war. It was the birth of a new empire, one that would stretch farther than anyone could have dreamed. The impact of this battle went far beyond the borders of Persia. Alexander's victory spread Greek culture, ideas, and knowledge across the world, from Egypt to India. Cities like Alexandria, which he founded, became hubs of learning, preserving books and wisdom for centuries. The world that came after his conquests, often called the Hellenistic era, shaped everything from Roman laws to the early days of Christianity. Even today, military leaders look to Gaugamela as a perfect example of how to win against impossible odds. Famous generals like Napoleon, Patton, and Rommel studied Alexander's moves. The ideas he used, focusing your strength in one key spot, messing with the enemy's mind, and finding their weak points are still at the heart of modern warfare. So, what can we take away from Alexander's greatest triumph? First, he didn't just win with weapons. He won with his brain. Before the battle even started, he spread rumors about Darius being a coward, making the Persian soldiers doubt their leader. He made sure his own men looked unstoppable, dressing them in polished armor and training them to act with perfect discipline. Every move he made sent a clear message. We're not just here to fight, we're here to destroy you. Second, being outnumbered doesn't always mean you are at a disadvantage. Sometimes, it's a chance to think differently. Alexander turned Darius's huge army into a weakness by making them overextend and lose focus. And finally, he showed that confidence and quick, bold decisions can beat almost any challenge. If you believe in your plan and act without hesitation, you can achieve the impossible. But here's the thing. Gaugamela wasn't even the end of Alexander's story. Ahead of him lay more challenges, rebellions within his own ranks, struggles to keep his empire together, and a journey to the very edge of the known world in India. His life was a constant test of how far one man could push the limits of ambition and genius. And that's what makes him so fascinating even today, over 2,000 years later. Now, I want to hear what you think. Was Alexander a true military genius? Or did he just get lucky at the right moments? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most epic battles, make sure to hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next adventure. Until then, keep exploring the incredible moments that shaped our world.